Coming up next, we're talking about some really strange bedfellows. There have definitely been some unusual collaborations throughout the rock era. This one definitely qualifies. During the 70s, progressive rock and punk were at polar ends of the musical spectrum, for sure. But by the 80s, both genres were evolving. Prog rock was becoming more bite-sized, and, punk was going post-punk and new wave. Still, when today's featured prog rock titans invited a rookie new wave singer-songwriter to collaborate with them, it was a match that no one could have predicted. In fact, this was the band's first and only collaboration with another lead vocalist, ever. Very out of character for these guys, and even better, the rookie had never heard the band before, and they're huge. And yet, it was a smashing success. Her vocal cameo was phenomenal. She took this song to another level with the band. And, it leads to the real discussion today. Today's band might be the only one who has 0 female fans. Find out why next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. If you remember The Alamo because of this classic 80s movie.
Where's the basement?
Excuse me?
Aren't we going to see the basement?
You're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now. Click the red button and click the bell so you always know when our latest and greatest come out. We also have a Patreon, but most of all, the t-shirt of the day. The blue Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon t-shirt. You can get it below at 80stees.com where they have thousands of other shirts you're going to love. Check it out below. Okay, so today we're returning to one of your favorite bands on this channel, and definitely one of mine. It's a hard rockin' trio of Geddy Lee, Alex Lifeson, and Neil Peart. That's right, it's time for another deep dive into the prog rock standard bearers, Rush. For today's entry, we're heading to the late 80s, an era that we really haven't covered yet with the band. From their 1987 album, Hold Your Fire, it's Time Stand Still, and if you haven't heard this one, you're gonna love it. Definitely a song that should have been a big hit. Okay, so by 1986, Rush was killing it with 11 studio albums under their belt, and the band had racked up 2 gold albums, 7 platinum albums, and 2 multi-platinum LPs, as well as 2 platinum live albums, all without the benefit of much mainstream radio exposure. Not much play. Even so, Rush had made some serious headway on the US rock charts, turning in top 5 hits like Limelight, Subdivisions, and Distant Early Warning. Their most recent album, the keyboard-driven Power Windows, had gone to number 10 on the Billboard 200, had gone to number 9 in the UK and number 2 in their home country of Canada. And the lead single, The Big Money, had reached number 4 on the US mainstream rock charts. Outside the sheer exhaustion of producing so much music, things were pretty good for Rush. Well, Rush wanted to keep that momentum rolling with their 12th studio album. The album would feature nearly as much synthesizer as Power Windows. However, to Alex Lifeson's delight, guitar riffs and guitar solos would make something of a comeback, something you always want to hear in Rush. Said Alex, and I quote, "Hold Your Fire was a good record. We were sort of coming to the end of our foray into the world of keyboards. Power Windows was layered with keyboards, and Hold Your Fire was a bit of a relief. We kind of pulled back a bit on the use of keyboards, but it was part of the 80s thing. That was the sort of headspace we were at that time." End of quote. Hold Your Fire would be recorded and mixed across 5 countries/territories, England, Canada, Montserrat, France, and the US. Released on September 8th of 1987, Hold Your Fire peaked at number 13 on the US album charts, went to number 10 in the UK, and it went to number 9 in the home country of Canada. The record had 2 singles, Prime Mover and Time Stand Still, as well as 2 additional promotional singles, Force 10 and Lock and Key. Great songs.
Anything can happen now. Time stands still. Look out for the force without form. So we keep it on the lock and key.
So let's get to our featured track today, Time Stand Still. This was actually the first song written for Hold Your Fire. In fact, the band's initial idea for the album was to build around the concept of Time Stands Still. And that was the tone setter. As always, the lyrics were written by Neil Peart, and in a sense, this song is kind of like a Rush retrospective. Kind of a reflection on Rush's nearly 2-decade career. According to Neil, Time Stands Still is about enjoying life and not letting it whisk by without appreciating it. It's about taking in the nostalgia for times past, but not at the expense of the future moment. Further elaborating, Peart explained that all through the 70s, our lives were flying by. We spent so much time on the road that it became like a dark tunnel. You start to think about the people that you're neglecting, the friends, the family. So the song is really about stopping to enjoy that, with a warning against too much looking back. Instead of getting nostalgic about the past, it's more of a plea for the present. End of quote.
Experience slips away.
Well, with the song's foundation in place, it was then up to Geddy Lee, as usual, to deliver Peart's thought-provoking lyrics. However, somewhat surprisingly, Geddy felt that Time Stands Still needed an additional voice. Specifically, a female voice. Now, this was a first for Rush, definitely. If you know anything about Rush, you know that they typically took care of everything in-house. For example, when the Canadian trio began to integrate keyboards into their sound, instead of bringing in a fourth band member, Geddy just took care of it himself. Rush felt they were at their best when it was just the three of them, the trio. It was unusual for them to break up that sort of dynamic. But Geddy pushed for an additional vocalist because this was exactly what Time Stands Still needed. Said Geddy, and I quote, "We knew that the part was a feminine part. We didn't want to use a keyboard or have Alex or myself sing it, so we started looking for a female singer. It's a very attractive opportunity for us to work with a female singer. We just looked until we found a voice that was suitable." So that surge started with 80s new wave princess Cyndi Lauper, who coincidentally had already written a massive hit about time a few years before, Time After Time. However, for whatever reason, Cyndi Lauper wasn't available, so then Rush reached out to their next vocalist on the list, the Pretenders' Chrissie Hynde, who they thought would be a perfect match for the song, only Chrissie wouldn't be available either. I heard Annie Lennox was also in there.
Was your part?
So as I've heard about all of this, I'm like, make yourself available. It's freaking Rush. Who wouldn't want to work with Rush? But after striking out a couple of times, Rush turned to a fairly new singer on the scene, Aimee Mann of the band Till Tuesday. Now, Till Tuesday had released their debut album Voices Carry in April of '85, and a self-titled single had climbed to number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100, one of the best songs of that year for sure. We've covered it before.
This is scary.
And then a year and a half later, Till Tuesday released their sophomore set. That was called Welcome Home. Although it was a kind of a commercial disappointment, the album's lead single, What About Love, showed promise. It reached number 26 on the Hot 100. And Rush actually really liked that song.
What about love, baby?
And though Rush was never a singles band, let's be clear, with her second top 40 hit, Until Tuesday, Aimee Mann had one more hit than Rush, who shockingly only had one top 40 hit, New World Man. How Tom Sawyer, Limelight, Spirit of Radio, and so many others missed the top 40, I'll never know, but I digress. Even though Aimee Mann was still a rookie at this point, the boys at Rush recognized her extraordinary talent. I said Peart, and I quote, "I don't know if she'd heard of us, but we were impressed by her great range between the angelic quality and that emotional contralto that she has." Now, it's true that Aimee Mann wasn't familiar with Rush, their catalog, but she was happy to take on the project. Now, 3 decades later in 2017, she told Guitar World, and I quote, "I'm not sure if they'd heard a song of mine or someone told them about me, but they contacted my manager at the time and asked me if I wanted to sing on it. Why not? I liked the song. I thought the part that they had for me was really pretty." It's crazy. Even though Aimee agreed to do it, she was like, "Are you sure?" Her impression was that Geddy's voice was more than strong enough to carry that track. And she remembers telling him that his falsetto was so great, they probably didn't need her. But Rush, they really wanted another voice on the track, so of course she obliged. Rush would rave about the results, calling Aimee a talented and true professional. Said Geddy, and I quote, "Finally, for the first time ever, a guest lead vocalist was featured on a Rush song. We brought in the charming and enormously talented Aimee Mann to sing with me. We wanted something, haunting, from someone who sounded angelic, a voice that floated down from the heavens, and she delivered exactly that. We were like schoolboys crushing over her." In fact, the guys liked Aimee's voice so much that they asked her to contribute backing vocals for a few other songs on the album. Taishan, Open Secrets, and Prime Mover.
When China sang to me, protection, open to your scorn.
In all, she was paid $2,000 for her work, Aimee Mann. But the fact that she had sung co-lead with Geddy on a Rush track, that in and of itself is just priceless. Especially since she's the only person to do so in their history. With her contributions to Time Stands Still, Aimee officially became part of the history of Rush, part of the story. Something that she eventually became very proud of. And as Aimee would discover as the years passed, that meant getting a lot of attention from Rush fans. Said Mann, and I quote, "I don't really have that many ties to prog rock besides my Rush appearance, but you'd be surprised how many Rush fans come up and ask me about that. Rush fans are pretty die-hard." Adding to her Rush resume, Aimee also got to play a part in the Time Stands Still music video. And oh man, what a video to be a part of. So 80s. Gloriously goofy. I mean, this clip's so bad, it's good. The entire video is Rush just playing their instruments while floating and flying through the air. You know what I'm talking about. And Aimee, she does that too. She's behind the camera. At that time, it was cutting-edge technology, but it hasn't exactly held up the best over the years. Still, you gotta love it. It's a lot of fun.
More of the people and the places that surround me now.
Said Geddy in 2013, "When my daughter saw this video for the first time, she just thought it was hilarious that we were flying through the air. It's such a strange video. It was just a bizarre day. Aimee Mann was hanging out with us all day and all night. She was such a good sport about the whole thing. And this is definitely my hair at its worst. It's a bad do. I don't even think we ever really nailed music videos, but who says we don't have some humor?"
I can't get around.
Time Stands Still was released as Hold Your Fire's first single. That happened on October 19, 1987. As I said, Rush isn't known for having a lot of success on the mainstream pop chart. On one occasion, addressing Rush's relationship with the mainstream, Geddy would say, and I quote, I love this quote, "Pop is a funny word. It means popular. And in that sense, we've always been a popular band. We've always been popular enough to sell and in good quantities. But because our music is unconventional and hard to categorize, it's been almost sort of cult pop. And for better or worse, Time Stands Still would not break free of cult pop status. In fact, it failed to even place on the Billboard Hot 100. However, where Rush did excel was in their niche, the US rock charts. Their Time Stands Still became one of 9 Rush songs to break into the top 3. In this case, it went to number 3. Okay, so I want to shift gears a little bit as we close out today's show. I mean, we've already been talking about Rush and women, specifically Aimee Mann, but I do want to explore the subject from another angle. You probably already know where I'm going with this. I'm talking about the myth of Rush having female fans. Okay, so traditionally, Rush fans have fallen into one of 2 categories. The first is, of course, men. And the second is men who aren't afraid to use the empty ladies' restrooms at Rush concerts. The joke is, of course, that back in the day, there weren't any women at Rush concerts. Still aren't. If you ask the band, that actually wasn't that far from the truth. In their 2010 documentary movie, Rush Beyond the Lighted Stage, band members commented on this phenomenon directly. Geddy explained, and I quote, We have the hardcore fans, the old fans that have been there from the beginning. They're usually male and they are really intense about the band. And then Alex adds half jokingly, in the early stages of our career, the fan base was very young and almost 100% male. And then as the years went by, it remained 100% male. In fact, in one of my many books on Rush, I think in one 500-page reference book I have on the band, I was looking through it and the book literally only used the word women 4 times and the word woman 3 times. I'm just saying. But why have women had such a small presence in the Rush narrative? What was it about Rush that attracted men and supposedly repelled women? The truth is, it's a dated stereotype and there are a lot more female Rush fans than there used to be. But I wanted to investigate this bygone phenomenon a little bit further. Without any surefire explanation from the band, I turned to the collective wisdom of the internet. God help us all. But I began scouring online forums to investigate fan theories, and there's some very wide-ranging theories out there. Some Rush fans postulated that it was Neil Peart's cerebral science fiction fantasy lyrics that turned women away. Others pointed to Geddy's high voice as a bar to entry. And then there's the complexity of music. Rush's music, which although technically incredible, perfect, it kind of lacks danceable rhythms, at least for, women who love pop. Others suggested that Rush's songs were too long, they weren't enough love songs, and that the band's bland stage presence lacked sex appeal, turning off women in the process. But whatever the reason, Rush has had a good sense of humor about the gender gap, and so has pop culture for that matter, which has consistently taken shots at the band and their so-called all-male fan base. I mean, the Dungeons and Dragons playing dorks and old-school computer nerds who live in their parents' basement. Hey, that's their stereotype.
I have no date, a 2-liter bottle of Shasta, and my all-Rush mixtape.
My own personal take is that I think it's the lack of love songs, or the lack of power ballads. Anyway.
Don't let him escape to the completely unoccupied ladies' room.
No.
But maybe the most in-depth pop culture commentary on the male fan base comes from the film I Love You Man, starring Paul Rudd, Rashida Jones, and Jason Segel. This romantic comedy follows Rudd's character Peter, who doesn't have any guy friends, but he needs a best man for his wedding. And after meeting a random guy named Sid, the two bond over Rush. Later, Peter tells his fiancée Zoe that he and Sid have gotten pretty good at playing a couple of Rush songs. Joey's like, what, like fast-paced rock? Shocked that she's never heard of him, Peter explained that he's talking about Rush, the Holy Trio. And he starts singing Tom Sawyer. But she's just not getting it.
The bass, big time. Slap at the bass. That sounded like Borat.
So he plays a track for her, hyping it up. Peter asks Zoe if she's ready for her world to get rocked and for her mind to get blown. Prepare to be Rushified.
Well, prepare to be Rushified.
But then after hearing the song and after watching Peter slapping the bass, Zoe's like, please just stop.
Slap at that bass, man. I slap at that bass.
Please don't do that.
Cut to the Rush concert later in the movie, and it's Peter, Sid, and Zoe in a sea of mostly men rocking out to Limelight. Very cool. Completely perplexed by her fiancé's odd behavior, once again slapping the bass, it's clear that Rush, it's just not her thing. So whether or not these scenes are an accurate look at Rush's fan base, they at least fit the stereotype, I guess. However, this side of the new millennium, the identity of Rush fans has definitely changed. More and more women are enjoying Rush.
In that moment, my sister's mind unlocked as she was ushered into a world of prog rock.
Let me know in the comments below if you're one of them. And as far back as 2002, Geddy noticed the shift. Speaking of their performance in São Paulo, Brazil, Geddy said, and I quote, "We were blown away by the range of generations who came to celebrate our music with us. Even more surprised by the large contingent of rockin' females. That's a first for us. It has to be said that by that time, even in North America, generations of fans were coming to see us. Fathers, daughters, sons, and little ones. And since then, the Rush female fan base has only continued to increase."
The innocence slips away.
But what do you think? For you longtime Rush fans out there, have you noticed a change in the band's fan base over the years? More women. To all our female viewers, what's your opinion of Rush? Do you like him? Why or why not? And what do you think about Aimee Mann's contributions to Time Stands Still in the song? It's just so good. Very poignant. Getty was right. Aimee Mann's voice was just what this song needed. I do have to say, my wife loves Rush. It's one of the reasons that I married her. So leave us a comment. What do you think about Rush? What do you think about this song? And all the other things I asked earlier. Let's have a great discussion. Rush female fans. It's kind of interesting. What other bands don't have female fans, only male fans? That'll be a fun discussion as well. Or some bands that only have female fans. Anyway, if you like our content, we invite you to subscribe below. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.